All right, everyone, welcome. Super excited about today. On behalf of myself and Dr. Pepe and many of us who are on the Florida Whole Blood Coalition, including Dr. Jim Roach, Chief Heath Clark, and many others, we welcome you. This is our fourth installation of the program, and we have, seen just incredible movement, starting, of course, with the folks in San Antonio, who, of course, started this whole thing, and then into New Orleans, and then obviously Broward Sheriff's Office, and then Palm Beach County, and now I have to mention Chief Bank out in Texas, who was probably maybe the earliest person to do this. But what we wanted to do is just to have another webinar and just get more people around the table and bring more ideas to the table. However, before we get started, I wanted to just touch on something that's very serious, very unfortunate. Many of you know and heard on the news that Broward Sheriff's Office Captain Terry St. Jackson unfortunately passed away on August 28th. His funeral is tomorrow. So let's just take a moment of silence. And for those of you who can attend, that'd be wonderful. I don't know if Chief Clark or Dr. Roach are on the call. I'm looking to see if they want to say a couple of words. Chief Clark or Dr. Roach, are either of you here? Okay.
Well, Peter, one of the reasons why it's probably relevant with respect to Captain Jackson is that they were the principal people to first get blood out there, out in South Florida, and they were moving it and helping. Where we are today largely was from the pioneer work, and he was one of we did it with air rescue is how we got started, and so it is kind of relevant to us, and it's part of our family in a way. Okay, so
Yes, thanks, Dr. Pepe. And I think many people don't recognize how difficult of a job that everyone who's in the field has, and so just great respect. And our mission, and Dr. Pepe helped with this one, it's worthwhile reading. I'll read it. To develop and sustain an involved, highly collaborative and productive stakeholder group who can promulgate and implement the ongoing use of whole blood and other life-sparing blood products across the state of Florida in the pre-hospital, hospital, and any immediate post-injury settings, or in any other relevant emergency crises, using evidence-based guidelines to actively contribute to a national data registry regarding 911 emergency blood product use. And let's move on to, if you've missed a coalition meeting, you can just use that QR code. I'll send you a follow-up email with all the links at the end, so you don't have to worry about getting to this now. This webinar will be in there as well. So let's actually get on with the show and talk about the agenda. First, we have Kenneth Church, Dr. Kenneth Church from Sciperio, who I heard about him on the news, and I reached out to him. He was kind enough to come to our webinar. He's going to blow you away about what his company is doing as far as creating whole blood, just using stem cells. So I'm really looking forward to that conversation. Followed by Gordon Clinton Folks III, who is the CEO of Archer First Response System, drone delivery of blood in the field, which I think is also very, very neat. And then we're going to go around the horn with some people who have been with us on the coalition for quite a while. Lieutenant Colonel Randy Schaefer, Dr. Mark Peel, Dr. John Krohmer, Dr. Juan Duchesne, and Dr. Danielle Tatum. And of course, I'm counting on Dr. Pepe to help me, as he always does, moderate this session. So without any further ado, Kenneth Church comes to us from Orlando. He is the CEO of Sciperio. Again, I mentioned earlier what they do. So I'm going to stop my share. Kenneth, thank you so much for joining us. If you want to give a further introduction of yourself, share your slides, and welcome to the show.
Peter, thank you so much. I appreciate tremendously the opportunity. It sounds like you guys have lost a very dear friend, and so I want to go ahead and salute that. Absolutely, I appreciate that very much. Appreciate the friendship that goes on in this community, and the heartfelt sadness right now to the captain and his family. So thanks so much for making that. Peter, before I start, can you see the slides? Are we okay?
Yep, you can see it.
Yes.
Okay, roger that. So again, my name is Kenneth Church, and I am not a biologist. And so we'll just start with that and go from there. The title of my talk, I guess I went back and I was trying to think about it. Who am I talking to? And I guess I didn't know who I was talking to. I titled it How to Make Blood. And so maybe I was thinking I might talk to a little simpler people than you guys. So if this is a little too simple, we're going to try to beef it up just a little bit to make sure that we hit some things that are interesting to you. I want to give a shout out to my team here. Those that are listed, super important. Those are the smart people on the team. Those are the people that make it happen. And this is happening right here in Orlando, Florida. We're very excited about what's happening here. And so again, shout out to my team and how that's working. This is not the entire team, but these are sort of the leaders in their areas. I also want to talk about sort of the genesis of this and how this happens. So if you're familiar with DARPA, lower left-hand corner DARPA, a gentleman named John Mogford was a program manager, and they did what was called blood farming program in 2008. And what the DoD wanted is they wanted to make blood for the warfighter that they might be able to replace, and maybe it replaces is an exaggerated word, but certainly supplement to replace what you could for the warfighter up on the front line. So how would you do that? Because sometimes it gets very challenging getting blood up there. So that was one of the things they did. And just in the very DARPA fashion, they start this off, and they were quite successful, very frankly. And so they did generate a number of different cells from a biological point of view. Started that in 2008, finished that 2011, 2012, and then like DARPA always does, they leave you alone. So they give you a lot of money, and then they go away, and it goes into the valley of what we call the valley of death, and just sort of stays dormant for a while. You'll get some people who'll pick up the research and start playing with it a little bit, and that's what happened. And then a number of years later, it actually started around 2019. Dr. Terry Roush from the Defense Health Agency came back in. He said that it was very important, this blood was, so he wanted to pick it back up. He went back over to Dr. Mogford and said, put your team back together. I want to move this forward. And so Dr. Mogford put his team back together, added a few other players in that. And John and I had been friends for a while. And so we came on, and you'll see why we came on. We came on more for an engineering reason. There's some things, and it wasn't just engineering, but engineering, chemistry, some science. And so we put all that together. It became very important how we try to move that thing forward. And so this is really, how do you make blood? It's really what I said, 2 cups of engineers, 1 cup of chemistry, 2 cups of biologists, 1 cup of software, 3 cups of crazy, and 4 cups of passion. It became very important that if you're not just a little bit crazy, this is not going to be a good place for you, because we have our ups and our downs. Things go well, things don't go well. But overall, what we have discovered, you need a multidisciplinary team. You need people who can truly understand all aspects of it. And one of the reasons that we have been very successful, very frankly, is our engineers had to learn some biology. That became very important. Our biologists had to learn some science, some engineering. That became very important. And it really got down to this. When the biologists have a need and they try to tell the engineers, instead of using words like, I need this thingy, and it needs to do kind of something like this widget, the engineers are like, man, I have no idea what you're talking about. So we want the biologists to be able to communicate more clearly and effectively to the engineers. And then the engineers need to do that back to the biologist. Instead of the same thing, say, give me some, you want something red that does what to it? It was really more, let me start learning about cells, and let me start learn a little bit about cell biology, and let me most importantly communicate effectively with you. And that's really what we're about. So our multidisciplinary team works very well for one reason. We are probably crazy and passionate, but really one reason, we have learned to communicate with each other effectively, and that became very important. So it leads me to the need. It's really kind of preaching to the choir. Why am I telling you guys about the need, since you guys live and breathe this every day? But nobody knows this more than you guys, what the need for blood really is, and what the challenges are in blood. And so again, we would appreciate all those who donate blood, and so the story goes. And there are some challenges in that. And the question is, can we come back in and can we really make a difference in that? That's really what we started looking at. Our mission, very, very frankly, was not necessarily to put it out that way. It will ultimately be that way. But our mission right now, as we have seen that, is to make sure that we are keeping the warfighter in mind. So where this thing starts, and hopefully this is not too foreign to most of us, but a hematopoietic progenitor cell, stem cells of sorts, those things can start dividing, and they can start deciding what kinds of cells they're going to be. And what we do is we want to take those things, expand those out, and then divide those. And so if you look at it from that HPC, from that one alone, it can become a B cell, a T cell, natural killer cell. You're looking at neutrophils, other kinds of white cells. If you're looking at megakaryocytes for platelets, and then red blood cells, all of that can come from that same starting point. And that'd be really interesting if you can start from that same starting point and drive it that way. So CD34 positive are the specific cells that we're looking for. That is our starter cell that we look at. So when we start talking about making blood, some people come back and say, oh, you're making synthetic blood. And our answer to that is, no, we're not making synthetic blood. It is real blood. It's just very young blood. And that becomes a very important concept as we start moving into this thing. This is real blood that we're driving toward. So we start with a CD34 positive cell, and those are typically harvested from there's not just these three, but these are the three main ones, whether bone marrow, cord blood, or peripheral blood. What we have found that for us, a great source for us is the umbilical cord blood. Mama has a baby, and it's not uncommon to harvest those cells from that. A lot of the parents are given that option. Would you like me to freeze some of those in case something happens in the future? One of the things that we've worked on also is tissue engineering. One day it's going to be very interesting that we store cells, we freeze those for however many years, and sometime down the line, when we truly start growing lungs, we start growing kidneys, we start growing maybe even complete hearts, you do it with your own cells. That becomes really interesting all of a sudden. And so for right now, it's not weird to harvest from umbilical cord blood. And so when they give you that option, and so what we have found, it's a good source for us because number one, it's abundant. It's also a good allogeneic source. And so what we're really saying is, obviously, you're not getting your own cells. Just like in blood, someone donates blood, you're not getting your own blood back. But you do want a good match. And so we could start looking at that and say, let's look at O positive, O negative, A positive, A negative, B. Those things are possible, but right now we're going with the abundant O and start looking that way as it reaches across. But it really gets down to this. It is a good source, but it's also young. We talked about that. So if our cells are young, that means what we're going to do also is our product is going to be young. Our blood is going to be young, and that can become very important to us also. And so as we start really quickly, as we start driving this thing, we start with the CD34 positive. If you look on the left there, a small vial of frozen cells. And so we say a small vial, we're talking a few million cells. And remember, you're talking, trillions of cells, 1 to 2 trillion of cells in a unit of blood. So we're talking about a small vial starting with millions. We thaw that, and then we put that into a bioreactor. And I always like to say it this way, when people talk about bioreactors, one of the best bioreactors that we know of is the human body. The human body is a great bioreactor, and you can punch out a lot of cells, and you do it incredibly efficiently, super efficient. And so what we want to do is say something similar to that. What are we trying to do? We need a bioreactor. And so you'll see this a little bit. We're going to try to mimic just a little bit that human body. But then the same thing is we've got to feed it. And so you put the cells in, you have to feed the cells. And that's what cell culture media is about. And, putting that in there. And just like the human body has waste, cells have waste. And so we have to deal with the waste. And then when we come through, we have to filter. We want the good cells to go where they're supposed to go, and the cells that maybe didn't, sit in the nucleated state, or, maybe it's a different kind of cell, we want that removed. So we have to filter that. And then you end up with what you have. And that is hopefully, I guess what we'd say are, a bag of blood, and that's where we're trying to get to. So what was our mission? First off, when the DARPA folks did this, and it was really kind of excellent when they did this, and I'll go back in one slide. When DARPA did this, it was $80,000 to make a unit of blood. And so I don't know if that's going to be very cost effective. I think that might be a problem. I could be wrong, but I think one blood, when they collect and they distribute, it's a little cheaper than that. And so we came back. Our mission was really quite simple. We need to lower the cost, and we need to increase the volume. And so it's that same thing. So with our team members, we put it together. We said, this is really where we're going. We're going to drive this thing, starting with the same things with hematopoietic progenitor cells. We're going to have media, put it in a bioreactor, go through a startup, phase so that we're ramping up this thing, running out RBCs or neutrophils. And I list those right now because those are the things that we're the most mature on. When we start making things, we have made T cells, we have made natural killer cells, we have made neutrophils, but our most mature cell right now is the red blood cell. And we are working with teams right now on platelets as well. And so when we looked at it, the mission really wasn't just to make blood. Dr. Roush said, I want whole blood, which made it quite interesting. But then also he wanted it forward deployed. And that became an interesting concept. So forward deployed to the DoD is in a forward operating base. And a forward operating base means it's not coming out of the United States. So if we were having a conflict somewhere overseas, then forward operating base is somewhere overseas. And so what they want to do is they want to make this over wherever it gave them the best advantage. One of the issues that we have in moving blood, you guys know this very well, it's logistics. And so from a logistical point of view, where do I keep the blood? How do I keep the blood? How much does it cost to keep the blood? As a matter of fact, the speaker coming next is part of that logistical train. So that's a very interesting conversation that's happening next. And so it really got down for the DoD, it's logistics. How do I move a lot of blood overseas? And I don't think it's any crazy secret these days, but we're struggling with air superiority, unlike we've never had in the past. So in the past, we were just absolutely dominant in the sky. The rest of the world is definitely moving that needle. And so that means when you start moving large volumes of frozen product, it's not only just very expensive, but it is now also very dangerous. That's a slow moving craft. And so they said, we need to start looking and thinking about this and how are we going to do this? I want you to think about it from an advantage point that you guys might have, though. If we can move and make blood in an FOB type position, isn't a hospital parking lot almost FOB? Or, some things around that. So wherever it's at, it might become really interesting. It's not just the fact that, maybe we're saying this is for the warfighter. We definitely have a dual purpose. And so one of those is definitely a civilian. And so, and we're going to talk about how we're trying to move eventually into a hospital parking lot. But red blood cells and, of course, platelets are for trauma. That's what really helps the warfighter if he gets in trouble. But if you're in an operating room and you've been radiated or chemotherapy and you're losing white blood cells like crazy to the point that it can be lethal, neutrophils are almost magic. They can bring you back to life in a crazy cool way. The problem with that therapy where you're extracting neutrophils from a human body and putting it in another human body, I think there's only 2 places in the United States that's able to do that. And you have to have everybody on the hospital bed at the same time. And you have to have yourself a couple of donors running at the same time because these neutrophils are really not very rugged cells. Red blood cells, they're pretty rugged. Once you get them going, you can freeze them, you can thaw them, you can use them. They really are pretty rugged. When we make them, you can, stir reactors, you can spin them. They'll handle the shear stress. Neutrophils are not quite the same. They go boom in a hurry, and they're made to go boom. That's what they do. They go wrap themselves around something and die. But they take it with them. And so the whole concept of how do I get neutrophils into a human, it's very expensive, it's problematic, and even though it's an amazing solution, it's just hyper complex and hyper expensive, so it's not readily used. If we can manufacture neutrophils, that would change a lot when we start talking about chemotherapy and some of those other actions. So that becomes a very exciting sort of side note in what's happening. So the DoD created what was called the On-Demand Blood Program. And so that's really where we're at right now. And that's who funds us. Dr. Terry Roush, of course, is my hero. Anybody who gives me money, I'm not going to lie to you, is my hero. And so he is my hero right now, to very frankly, the tune of several tens and tens of millions of dollars that he has into this thing. And even with that, we're still short of money to draw it. And so we keep drawing back against it. looking for those right resources. So we had a 5-year plan, and at the end of the 5-year plan, we were going to try to drive into human trials and start the FDA process. And what happened is, that nasty thing called COVID came along. And when COVID came along, we got swept, and that was a piece of beauty. And while we got swept, what we just did is we extended our money and pushed it out in a very skinny way, I guess you might say. We did an amazing job of making progress over the COVID period, certainly on the RBCs, made some good progress on neutrophils. But as we started doing it, we attacked the natural killer cell. We attacked the T cell. So we attacked some of these other cells in a demonstration phase. But then really where it got down to when you start looking at, say, somewhere around year 2, year 3, and so we call those funded years. We are in year 3 right now, funding funded years. And so we are supposed to start looking at plasma components. And right now that is on hold with us for just a bit due to funding. We are funded pretty well on the red blood cell and reasonably well on the neutrophil. And so that is what we're driving right now. They're very interested in platelets. We're working with a couple of folks on the platelet side. People are making platelets, and the megakaryocyte makes a really nice platelet that they've seen. That's what they've been able to do. But it wasn't very efficient. 1 megakaryocyte for 1 platelet is not a good ratio. And so they needed a lot more. So they had a group that got it out there to 100 for 1. That was exciting. But unfortunately, those were not functional. And so apparently you want the platelets not just to be real, but you want them to be really functional as well. And so we're back to another team that we're working with that we feel very good about making functional platelets. And then our job is to try to increase that volume. And so again, our job is decrease the cost, increase the volume. And how do we do that? If you look there, we have a little sort of CG representation of doing this in a box. Again, I appreciate the next speaker flying the blood around. I think that's a beautiful vision, very frankly. But we also, right now in our facility in Orlando, our biolab is in a Connex box. And that is interesting. We actually made a BSL-2 Connex box, mostly because that was our mission. And so when you walk into our Connex box, you're quite surprised when you walk in because it looks just like a bio laboratory. Pristine, lots of equipment. Eventually, we'd like it not to have to be a BSL-2 laboratory. We'd really like a BSL-2 in the bioreactor itself. But right now, we're sustaining the mission and showing that we are going mobile, and that's really what we're trying to do. So what we've seen is the average human produces lots of RBCs, and the bioreactors produce about 1,000 times worse. So what are we going to do? What we called it a voxelized bioreactor. So don't do it all in one big tank, divide it up. That's really where we tried to go. So that was attack number 1. Attack number 2 was what you feed the cells. Start tweaking what you feed the cells, see if you can lower the cost in how that goes and optimize that. So what I want to do is I want to increase the number of cells by what I feed that per milliliter. And if I can do that, so the human body is 5 times 10 to the 9th per milliliter. If we can get to 3 times 10 to the 8th, we are at a very good cost break point. We are sitting about 1 times 10 to the 8th right now by tweaking the media. The other thing we did tweaking the media, we said, what if we could replace the expensive things with something cheaper? Transferrin is very expensive. And so we replaced it with a ferric citrate, and we dropped the cost significantly. It's like $1,000 versus 30 cents when it comes to transferrin versus ferric citrate. It was a great move on that part. So that became very important when we started doing, and we did that and maintained the performance. So here was the system. We said, okay, but we're wasting a lot. You feed it, the cells grow, they make waste, and then you get rid of all the waste and you put brand new media in. We said, wouldn't it be nice, instead of just putting brand new media in, if I could refurb the media, get rid of the lactate, get rid of the ammonia, keep the rest of the media, spike what's gone, and then recirculate it and feed it back in. And we dropped the cost of the media by 80% by doing a refurb recycle. We then went back in and we said to make the separation of the cells, when it says cell media separation, and the filters, that became very complex. And so we moved to microfluidics. And if you look here on the microfluidic side, that is a tiny chip. And when I say a tiny chip, you could not see the size of those channels. So what will happen is your cells will actually flow into those little channels and spin around. So think about a centrifuge, and that's how you separate, it out now. This is like a centrifuge on a chip. And so when you start moving media through that, when you start moving cells through that, depending on how fast you move through, if you're going very slow, it's just sort of sitting there, you can see it filling all the channels.
And so basically, like the fundamental theory of how this functions is we've got, each system has a database of 60,000 coordinates that we can send this aircraft to and make emergency deliveries to. So we integrate into 911 computer-aided dispatch softwares, which I'll show you in a second. And when a 911 call comes in to the ECC, the latitude and longitude of that particular caller is pushed over to us. And then we respond back to the assignment dispatcher with a point on the map where this delivery would occur, and with an ETA as well. From there, the dispatcher can make a determination if they want to deploy this system based on standard operating procedures or based on the particular type of call. And if so, they can click to confirm that deployment. All of our backend infrastructure then does a pre-flight check where we look at live air traffic, temporary flight restrictions, advisories, the health of the aircraft, of the housing unit, and the system itself. And if all of these variables are within their accepted threshold, then the aircraft is deployed. And that whole process takes about 18 seconds. So the last kind of piece I want to show you is what that looks like from the dispatcher screen. So I'm sure some people on this call are familiar with Rapid SOS. We've integrated into their Rapid Portal platform. We've also integrated and our partners with Rapid Deploy in their Radius Plus platform. But just to kind of show how this works, on the left side of the screen here usually is where the 911 calls will stack up in an ECC center. When you click on a particular call, the map will zero in on that caller, and on the top of the screen, there's a request drone button. So the dispatcher will click that, and they click to confirm sharing that data. And what's happening here is they're pushing to us that 911 caller's location, and then we respond back on this map. I don't know if you can see here, this little icon where that delivery would occur. The dispatcher can click on that icon, they can see an estimated time of arrival, and then we provide them with a confirmation link, like, do you want to confirm this deployment? If they click that, then that confirms that deployment, initiates our housing unit rolling open, that pre-flight check. And then if all of those things pass, then the aircraft is deployed. And then we actually stream the aircraft's location back into this map. So the dispatcher can watch as the aircraft takes off and makes its way to that particular location. So as the aircraft flies, the dispatcher can relay information to the person on the scene, like, hey, we're sending you a unit of blood, we're sending you a defibrillator, we're sending you Narcan. It'll be on the scene in 1 minute and 16 seconds. And they can kind of walk people through either CPR or tourniquets, or trying to triage the event in general. Once the aircraft gets to the scene, just like in that video, we hover over that scene, we lower that payload down to the ground, and the aircraft just simply returns back to that station and lands. So all of this is already integrated into Rapid SOS. So if you have an agency that uses this platform, we can literally call the Rapid SOS team, have them toggle on this tool, and you'll have it integrated directly into your platform without any change to the platform or to any other systems that your ECC might use. And we also have simulated versions of this system. So if you're an agency that's like, this could be cool, we kind of want to see how it would work, no problem. We can spin up simulated versions of this system, populate it with delivery coordinates like you saw, activate it in your Rapid SOS portal, and then you can start using it and deploying it to live 911 calls, seeing what the response times would be, see how it would work in your dispatch workflow, and so forth. So that's the Rapid SOS integration. It really helps us help streamline the integrations into emergency communication centers and into agencies' existing dispatch workflows without any kind of major change to the dispatch process.
Gordon,
lastly,
Gordon, just real quick before you go, there's a few people asking about weather or wind. Can you address that real quick?
Yes. Yeah. So in that automated pre-flight check, I thought that I mentioned it, but I maybe skipped it. We do look at hyperlocalized weather conditions, both current and forecasted, both for the takeoff point and where that delivery would occur. So for a deployment to be approved, we have certain weather thresholds. The aircraft that we fly is safe to fly up to 17-mile-per-hour sustained winds. So anything above that, we take that system offline and it can't be deployed. But if it's, less than that, then it's good to go. So we do look at hyperlocalized weather conditions, both current and forecasted, as part of that pre-flight check.
And then the other two good questions are: is the payload being dropped, or are you landing? And then how many items can be put into the drone at one time? Is it just one payload?
So we lower the payload down to the ground on a tether. We keep the aircraft. It's actually a good kind of segue into this last video here. On these aircraft, we have emergency parachute recovery systems, which help facilitate operations over people, property, and moving vehicles that are not necessarily a part of that operation, basically the general public. So this is just a short video through our certification process of these parachute recovery systems. So if the aircraft were to have some type of critical failure that forced it to fall out of the sky, this emergency parachute recovery system deploys, inflates, and then slows the descent of the aircraft so there's not any damage on the ground or any harm to people on the ground. So kind of back to the question of, do we land or do we lower the payload down? During operations, we keep this aircraft above its minimum deployable altitude for that parachute, just to help minimize the ground risk of the operation in general. So we always keep the aircraft at 200 feet unless it's taking off and landing at the fire EMS station that's there.
Great, thank you.
So yep, that's kind of like just the last video, the last little piece of content here to share is just us going through this very intense parachute certification process to certify this emergency parachute recovery system on the aircrafts that we operate. And then the other question that was asked, how many devices or how many things can we put in this payload? So we can carry about 6 to 7 pounds of payload. When we carry defibrillators and Narcan, we put both of them in a single payload and we just deploy it and we lower it to the ground, and the dispatcher walks the victim through, or basically the lay rescuer through, which device to use, how to find that particular device, and so forth. We figured that we don't want to necessarily over-engineer it and take time to swap payloads and have some additional points of failure into the system. We'd rather have a single unit that has everything in it. But so when it comes to blood transit, you could probably fit 1 or 2 units of blood in there, along with the cooling systems and so forth. But yeah, so I'll play this video one more time because this kind of shows in this video, it looks like the payload is being free dropped, but it's actually being controlled on a descent on a tether here. So it's actually being lowered here, and we lower it down to the ground. Yeah, we lower it down to the ground as quickly as we can without causing any damage to the devices inside of that payload. Yeah, so that's kind of the gist of the system. There's a lot of moving parts. All of the aircrafts and the housing units are all run over AT&T FirstNet. So we have the prioritized connection that first responders receive on that network, which is great. But all of this it's very real. It seems kind of like off in the distant future, but with the rapid SOS integrations, the parachute certification systems, and all the infrastructure around it, this is here, and it's here, and it's effective. So I will.
So Gordon,
sharing.
Are you and maybe I missed it, but are you currently live with the AED aspect of it with agencies?
So we have our first 2 agencies. First one slated to go live this year. Second, the first quarter of next year, and then taking them out from there. So the first ones will go live this year.
Okay, and then so it sounds like you're kind of geared up for the AED Narcan items, and then as far as whole blood, what is, as far as a realistic time frame, number one, and then secondly, if let's say the hospital was where the whole blood was coming from, right? Because they have the blood bank, they have the storage, etc. How does that look at the hospital side? Do they have to have someone kind of sitting there near the roof or the launch point to say, okay, I'm putting the blood in, and the drone knows what to do because of rapid SOS? Like, is that how that happens? Or is that how you envision it happening?
Yeah, exactly. So there's with these systems, there are standard operating procedures around their operation. So obviously for like defibrillators and Narcan, the shelf life of those devices and items is a bit longer than, units of blood. So whatever the shelf life of that unit of blood is, maybe it's, 90 hours or so, you'd have to swap and put a new unit of blood in there. So which may you may end up deploying a system or deploying a unit out before that 90-hour mark hits. But yeah, I mean you could put these systems at a hospital system. We've talked with some agencies about putting them at their blood banks so that the operation is a bit more smooth. You can just every day or so swap in a new unit of blood. And the cool thing about all of this, because all of these are connected on LTE cell networks, the housing unit and the system doesn't necessarily have to be installed at an EMS station. It could be installed at a hospital. It could be installed at a blood bank and still be dispatched by the emergency communications center through rapid SOS or through their computer aided dispatch software. So if there was a 911 call came in that was hemorrhaging or some type of event where they needed a blood unit, that emergency communication center and those assignment dispatchers would be able to deploy the system directly to that 911 caller's location, regardless of, where the initial takeoff and landing location is.
So now I understand it. What you're saying is that no one at the hospital has to do anything because that drone is prepackaged with blood. It's in its cooling, it's in its cooler, it's Credo, what have you, Delta cooler, and it's just waiting for a signal to be launched. There doesn't
in a
have
way,
to be a human being there.
Yeah, exactly. In a way, it's kind of like a cocked and loaded gun that's just waiting for someone to pull the trigger. And when the trigger is pulled, then that database of delivery coordinates we do what's called a geospatial query again to determine which one of those 60,000 coordinates is the closest to where that 911 call came in from. And there's a waypoint mission associated with that coordinate. So that mission gets grabbed, uploaded to the aircraft, housing unit rolls open, that pre-flight check happens, and then if everything is passed, then the aircraft is deployed, runs that mission, comes back and lands, and then then someone would follow a reset standard operating procedure to put a new payload, new blood in the unit, and so forth.
That's incredible. Some other interesting questions. If you have an issue at an airport, we had the Fort Lauderdale airport shooting, Dr. Pepe, etc. was there. Does the FAA have any restrictions with you going towards an airport and dropping?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are various different airspaces, various different controlled airspaces. Getting very close to airports is fairly challenging, especially if you were to fly like into an airport. That would be this probably wouldn't be the best solution for getting blood like directly on a tarmac or something. Okay. When we install these systems, that 35 square mile circle, we look at basically like what airspace does this overlap? And if it does overlap, for example, say we're 3 miles away from Orlando International Airport, that's a Class B airspace, I think from surface level to 1,500 in that 3 mile distance from there. So to operate within that Class B, we work with Federal Aviation Administration. You get what's called a certificate of authorization to be approved to operate within that particular airspace. There might be some caveats from the FAA to get that approval, and then you could move forward and operate from there. There's other airspaces like Class G, which are unregulated airspaces where you don't necessarily or you don't need a certificate of authorization. You just need particular waivers for certain rules from the FAA. But yeah, so flying directly onto the tarmac of an airport would be probably the most challenging place to fly into.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to bring in Michael Taylor, and if anybody else has a question, please raise your hand. But Chief Moran from Davie says perhaps you could drop it off at a staging area and bring it in by ground, which is another one. Michael, come on in and ask Gordon your question.
Can you hear me, sir?
Yes.
Yes.
Hey, Gordon. Great presentation. You make it sound like you're sending nuclear launch codes and blowing open the doors of the ICBM silo. Which I hope our federal government has as sophisticated a system for their ICBMs as you do for your drone. But
we're just worried about the UAPs.
So a couple questions. One, I see the video you showed us says TGH on it, and also says Manatee County, which I'm in Hillsborough County. So this is my neck of the woods. Do you actually have them deployed there now?
That's one of the initial installation locations that will be taking live soon. Yep.
Okay. And what about avoiding helicopters? We have a lot of helicopters flying around Tampa Bay. The recreational ones, the sightseeing ones, and then a bunch of medical helicopters that are also going to be flying into these scenes. So how do we make sure that your drone doesn't get sucked into the blades of one of my helicopters?
Yep, good question. That's one of the bigger questions around flying unmanned air systems beyond visual line of sight is this concept of detect and avoid and being able to understand where aircraft are in the national airspace and to give way. Basically, unmanned air systems are at the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to right of way. So all of our aircraft have to have the capacity to give way to all manned aviation in the national airspace. So there's a handful of ways of managing detect and avoid. For example, there are some airspaces, for example, what's called a Mode C veil, and every manned aviation or manned aircraft in that airspace has to broadcast their location over a radio frequency called ADS-B. So we have ADS-B in receivers, so we're able to receive that frequency, understand where everything is, and we use that to actually help determine whether or not our systems can be deployed. So when we do that pre-flight check, we're actually looking at the live locations of aircraft in the national airspace and determining whether or not there's one within a close proximity of that particular flight path that we would fly for that mission. And then if there's not, then we deploy. And then as we're en route, if there is something that looks like it might intrude and break a less than well clear barrier, which is basically 2,000 feet horizontally or 250 feet vertically, then we initiate avoidance maneuvers, which might be we're returning home and landing. We might loiter and decrease altitude, or we might emergency land somewhere to get out of the way. We also are working. We work with hospital systems for our standard defibrillator transit Narcan solutions. And for example, one of our hospital partners, we work directly with their air care team. And so when we deploy, we actually send them notifications of where we're taking off from, where we're going, what time it is, what time we expect to get to that location, when we expect to leave, and so forth. So there is a level of coordination with the air care teams as well. It can be different from institution to institution based on procedures that they follow for dispatch and routing and so forth. But so it's a combination of monitoring air traffic through a variety of different means, as well as a coordination between the air care teams and our infrastructure.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Great question. Let me bring in Dr. David Miramontes, San Antonio Fire Medical Director. David.
So I have a couple of questions. So this obviously is not going to work in Washington, D.C. with restricted airspace, right? Around the White House.
It's not impossible, but it's improbable, I would say. Usually you do the path of least resistance for rolling out new technologies. And I would say doing this operation in DC would probably be the path of most resistance, given the airspace restrictions, just as you mentioned. But it's not impossible. It's the type of thing where you request certification or approval from the FAA, and that would just be a highly scrutinized certificate of authorization to receive from the FAA.
How about around federal bases? For example, I have Camp Bullis in Lackland. Camp Bullis is one of our really remote training bases for Army, Air Force, and Navy in our area. Do you have restrictions on flying into federal reservations like that?
So the cool thing about this infrastructure is that we would lease it to that institution or that agency or whomever it is that's managing that base, and their EMS team would be operating it, or that institution would be operating it. So we would help them with the waiver process, and if they needed certificate of authorizations. But if you wanted to put this on an Air Force base where there's an airstrip and there's people flying in and out, we would tailor those delivery coordinates to certain locations and the waypoint missions associated with them to make sure that they didn't cause any distress or distraction for the actual operations there. But so that would be more of like a case by case operation. Class G systems, if we're here in Florida, we want to cover a particular part of Osceola County or something. That would be likely a Class G airspace, and there'd be kind of less considerations than would be putting it on a particular Air Force base. But because this infrastructure can be run by whichever agency is managing that area, it would it would look less like me coming in and doing it instead it would look like me equipping this agency or that institution with infrastructure and then them implementing it. And that would probably be the way that an installation in an area like that would look.
Fantastic. And what is a guesstimate cost? That doesn't have to be exact. What are we talking about here?
Yeah, so we try and keep the price between $120,000 to $150,000 annually for these systems, and that includes the infrastructure, the satellite analysis, maintenance, both reactive and proactive, and then that provides 35 square miles of coverage with average 2.5-minute response times.
So we're not buying a drone; we're leasing it.
Usually a lease and service agreement is our standard kind of model. But we could sell this infrastructure and then sell it and then provide a servicing agreement aside from that as well. We're pretty flexible. We try and work with sponsors so that agencies can get access to the equipment without it being a massive chunk to their operational budgets. Our goal as a company is to provide as much coverage as possible, really to help prevent cardiac arrest, overdoses. And now that we've had so much influx and ask about blood transit, and that this is becoming a lot more of a common ask, it's certainly something that we're looking to conquer as well.
Now, is that 150-ish per unit or per region?
Yes, that's per system. That's basically per 35 square mile chunk. So exactly.
Okay, well, it makes sense because if you look at how much we're spending on refrigeration and cooling and all the other logistics around whole blood, around a region, it ends up costing quite a bit of money. So it's very interesting. Awesome, great. This is fascinating. I'm sure there's probably a lot of other questions. One last one that I thought was good, Dr. Siegler from WashU. If there was a change in drop-off location mid-flight, how does that work?
Yeah, so if basically you could pop to a different one of those delivery coordinates.
Okay.
So if you needed to adjust, you could. But usually at least with the rapid SOS integration, we're getting the lat and longitude of the GPS unit from the actual cell phone. So it's usually within 50 feet of the caller.
Okay. Awesome. Well, Gordon, man, this was incredible. Thank you so much for educating us. And I think a lot of people on this call are realizing for the first time that we're already here rather than this being some thought process in the future. So we're going to be following who you deploy with here in Florida. And if people want to reach out to you, would you mind just putting there you go. You put your email.
I dropped my my email in the chat there, and we're looking for partners here in Florida and outside the state of Florida as well for all things for defibrillator transit, Narcan transit, blood transit, tourniquets, really any type of time sensitive lay rescue or medical device, or even I guess blood isn't really lay rescuer, but could be certainly helpful in that scenario as well. So,
well, the gentleman who asked you the question last.
Yeah,
the gentleman who just asked you the question, Dr. David Miramontes, if anyone's going to do it, he's the guy. So you guys should talk. All right.
Peter, I was going to ask if we're at a SWAT standoff, can they drop by pizzas? That's the other thing, right?
As long as it's under, a calzone might be easier, just more aerodynamic, but
good plan. Yeah, great. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Well, Gordon, thank you so much. You can, we're going to be moving on to the next segment. So we appreciate your time and thank you for joining us today.
Of course. Yep. Have a good one, everybody.
Okay.
All right. Excellent. All right. Moving on. We're kind of on time here, even with interruptions. We're bringing on next a fan favorite, Lieutenant Colonel Randy Schaefer, who is, been very helpful to many organizations around the country who are setting up their whole blood program. And, she's been on our webinar coalition before. And I asked Randy, can you give us a lay of the land across the country? So Randy, take it away.
Hey, thank you for the invitation. So as part of the pre-hospital blood transfusion working group that I'm working with, I've been trying to closely track the status of EMS agencies across the country that are doing blood. Air, I don't have a breakdown yet, but we do know that by scope of practice, it is allowed in all 50 states. air can be somewhat a fickle industry with agencies coming in, leaving, being bought and sold. So I will tackle that, but I focus primarily on the ground agencies now. 115 that I'm tracking across the US. And hopefully this is the first look at the type of agencies that are doing it and the blood products that are being used. So right now, almost split between fire-based EMS and third service. That 20% miscellaneous is either a hospital-based EMS program. We have several law enforcement agencies now that are doing blood. So again, the preponderance being split between that fire-based and that third service. Since we, I guess, last talked, West Virginia now has their ground program up and running in Cable County. Birmingham, Alabama has rolled out their blood program. Maryland State Police on the aviation side. And I have to give credit to the tenacity and persistence of that program. Doug Flicari and his team, I started working with in 2019, I believe, to get blood rolled out there. So kudos to them for finally going live on that. And then I see Scott Brainey's on the call that received word that Colorado did receive their waiver from the state to start doing pre-hospital blood. So I know he's going to rapidly add to our map that we are building. Looking at the types of products that the agencies are using, predominantly low titer O positive whole blood, with a few agencies out there that are doing low titer O negative whole blood, followed by PRBCs and plasma. There's 5% that I was not able to track down the types that are using, but those are the big players. There is no centralized reporting mechanism. It really has relied on personal correspondence. I know I've sent you emails and text messages and phone calls on this group trying to track down the accuracy, some internet searches and social media. So if you're tracking a program that's coming up online, if you could definitely let me know that. Eric Bank is also working with me on this. We're getting this mapped out and we'll hopefully have a publication here in the next month or two going out to the Journal of Trauma on behalf of the national program that I'm working with. Let's see.
Awesome. And so if people want to reach out to you and just to get your advice, etc., they can email you here.
Absolutely.
Also, I saw, Randy, that you posted this. I added this slide. You posted this a few weeks ago on LinkedIn. That the International Association of Emergency Medical Services Chiefs put out a very nice, strong statement about it. You want to comment on that?
Actually, John Krohmer is on the line. I know he engaged directly with them.
Oh, okay. He's coming up next. Perfect. Awesome. So, Randy, any last thoughts, or I hope I didn't cut you off there?
No, you're good. The question of leuko reduced, non-leuko reduced, I'm not there yet, but as I continue to build the relationships with these agencies, that we'll be able to find that answer. We're also working as part of a national project with America's Blood Centers and American Red Cross, and they're getting ready to send a survey out to their blood centers to try to get a little bit of clarity on the types of products that they're providing for their pre-hospital clients.
Excellent. And Dr. Duchesne, you have a question? Go ahead. For Randy.
Yeah. I don't have that much of a question. I just want to make sure that we actually push all these efforts that you're putting together into legislation, because you have enough data that we can potentially start looking at disparities in care. And I think that it is our job as a coalition to show legislation and all these people in Washington, D.C. of the disparity in outcomes between patients that are getting blood and those that are not. And we need to standardize this. We need to stop the politics. We need to start putting money where it belongs. And I think that you have the tools to do so. So let me know how we as a coalition can make this happen.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Thank you. And John will talk a little bit more about the national efforts that we would love to get you and some of the registry involved with.
Oh, I love to fight with politicians. Put me on.
All right. Well, this one you won't fight with. He's an incredible human being. So we all know and love Dr. John Krohmer, who is the immediate past director of the Office of EMS at NHTSA. And he just couldn't retire. and he's really engaging in this arena. So, Dr. Krohmer, thank you for joining us, and please give us an update.
Well, thanks, Peter. We really appreciate it, and it is very exciting and encouraging. Not only the activities that you've got going on in Florida, but North Carolina, Colorado, Texas, obviously, and a number of other states. The National Coalition Initiative has been very busy over the last couple of weeks. We did a briefing to the National EMS Advisory Council a couple of weeks ago, did a briefing yesterday to the Federal Interagency Committee on EMS. As Randy mentioned, we have had some follow-up meetings with AABB, the American Blood Centers, and the American Red Cross, not only to gather information to supplement what Randy is working on, but to make sure that they are will be participating as integral components of the National Blood Coalition that Randy alluded to. We are very optimistic and hopeful that the formal announcement and press release will go out to the community, including your coalition, other coalitions, the national organizations that we've had outreach with. The press release going out next week. We're hoping to start meetings of the 4 pillar working groups within the next several weeks, as well as the larger overall coalition. So what we're looking at right now is formal announcement early next week, followed by what will probably be a very informal survey to identify a best option date for a meeting within the next 4 to 6 weeks. And then we'll get things rolling very aggressively. So again, this coalition is being formed just to bring anybody and everybody who is interested to the table, talk about issues, talk about activities, talk about legislative issues, reimbursement issues, scope of practice issues, and help to coordinate the activities so we could try and make all of these things happen very, very quickly. Anybody has questions or want more information, please email me and we'll make sure that you get included on the distributions.
Thank you, John, so much. I can't tell you how important it is to have you making those movements at the national level. At the same time as some of us are doing it on the ground level. And then you have people like Randy and Dr. Duchesne, who are kind of the glue that are kind of helping everyone understand the power behind it, looking at the data, registries, etc. And let me bring in Dr. Pepe. Paul, you have any comments?
Yeah, Randy, I think Dr. Schaefer had said something about there was a statement, a position paper coming out from the Fire Chiefs Association. Is that right, John? And said you knew about it?
Well, yeah, actually the statement that was referred to was by the International Association of EMS Chiefs. There had been a joint policy statement on hemorrhage control, including the use of blood products. The joint statement being ACEP and AMSP and the American College of Surgeons Committee on Trauma. Following along that line, the IAEMSC put out their position statement just a couple of weeks ago, which is very consistent with and very supportive of the other position statement.
The reason why I was asking is because I've been tasked to write up something on behalf of the Metro Chiefs and the Urban Fire Forum. And so as a result, I want to make sure it's in sync and whatever is going out there, I'm saying the same language. So it'd be great to have those. That'd be really good. Thanks.
You got it.
Awesome.
Dr.
Krohmer, thank you so much.
Okay, you send those along to me and I may call you later about it as well. So, okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much. That was an incredible update. And now we're going to move into the data side, which is, really extremely important. Yeah. Yes.
If I can just interrupt, because I just
go ahead.
Saw the chat question there about reimbursement or funding issues. And yes, that is one of the pillars that we're working we will be working very aggressively on. We've started some preliminary work, but it'll be working with the community, federal agencies, and potentially Congress.
And by the way, if this drone thing works and it's at a hospital, the cost of the blood goes away. It's now not an EMS problem. Storage, cost, reimbursement, it's all on the hospital side. So that's
Right.
why I really, love this idea. So Randy, you want
Yeah,
to say something?
The only
Go ahead.
reimbursement that's currently available is with hospital-based programs, whether they're air or ground.
Got it.
Yeah,
Randy?
courier costs are real. I had the opportunity to spend a couple days in North Carolina, and Atrium Wake Forest Baptist in Winston-Salem. I can't believe I got all that out. They are actually a hospital-based system that is supporting pre-hospital blood, and they're spending thousands of dollars a month on courier fees. I don't know if we should get that recorded in case the administration figures that out at the hospital, to send the blood out to these rural agencies to support it. So courier costs are a real thing.
Yep. All right, excellent. So let's move into the data. One of my favorite people, Dr. Mark Peel, pediatric ICU physician, EMS medical director, founder of 410 Medical, the Life Flow. Mark, you have been working with the registry, and I'm going to have Dr. Duchesne come on right after you. But if you can, I know you have some exciting data to talk about. If you wouldn't mind taking it away.
Peter, I'm share my screen. Am I allowed? Yeah, here we go.
Yep. I made you a co-host.
Okay. I have the privilege of working with Tom Dransfield and others and Juan Duchesne in New Orleans on some of the exciting data they are working on and producing through their program. Can you guys see the screen okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Tom, if you're on, maybe you can kind of speak to some of your recent numbers, almost 200 administrations since you started your program, a lot of exciting outcomes, which Juan will detail here in a second. Probably too much data to go over here in the time we have, but just exciting to see what in short transport times with a severely injured population afflicted by pretty high rate of gun violence, what outcomes you guys are producing. So Tom, do you want to comment here on some of the numbers?
Yeah, we're like I said, or like you said, we're at like 196 as of like yesterday. I think we had another one this morning. And that's holding pretty consistent. If you see our numbers for 22, the whole year was 104 total administrations. So we're at 77, 78 right now for the whole year this year so far. We go in spurts, and Dr. Duchesne can probably go speak to that. We'll have like some months we're having 14 or 15, just bam, 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 and then we'll hit a lull. And as we haven't had any administrations for a while, but yeah, and then it's like we're just some of the things we're looking at is like people ask all the time what our initial access is, and so I did a little comparison of that of the 196 of them. So majority of them are either peripheral IVs or humeral head. So IO, interosseous. So that's a curious thing that they wanted to look at. And then the airway question is always there. If they were intubated before or had some kind of advanced airway before they, whether they got CPR or not. So that's just some of the stuff we track. And then got some updated heat maps, but this is an older one through July. But you can see we're kind of spread out throughout the whole city. It's not just one geographic area where we're having all of our shootings. So it's just kind of all over the place.
Well, thanks for what you're doing, Tom. It's super exciting. I think notable here, we'll show you in the data, but in the group that got blood, the rate of pre-hospital intubation compared to before you started has gone down a lot. So the value of resuscitating before you intubate, and remarkably, almost half of the patients are getting their blood through a humeral head IO. So that's pretty interesting as well. I'll let Juan address some of the outcomes here, but just one of the studies that we worked on was looking at a cohort of patients who got the whole bundle that the New Orleans team is giving, which included 2 units of pack cells, 2 of calcium, 2 TXA for penetrating injury and shock, hypotension. And in these studies, the isolated head injuries and pre-hospital cardiac arrests were removed. And in this first bit of data, which I think we discussed briefly on the last webinar, we just looked at shock index reduction from scene to hospital. So pretty dramatic improvement in shock with with that bundle being administered in about a 9-minute transport time and a fairly low mortality, unexpectedly low mortality rate among these super sick patients, low rate of need for advanced airway as well. And then
something that we are putting attention right now, this is what we call the platinum first minutes after injury in hemorrhage patients. And we're going to try to put this as a statement paper out there, because what we're noticing is obviously everybody's talking about the death diamond, which is the acidemia, hypothermia, coagulopathy, which is nothing new, but now we're adding hypocalcemia. And as you know, hypocalcemia correlates with clotting factors, and it correlates with contractility of the heart. So when we give more in-hospital blood and this group of patients that are already hypocalcemic coming from the scene, that actually might be a problem. And what we're going to start looking at in the future studies, the impact of the ARC that we're doing with early refill and the death diamond. So that there's more to come. I just wanted to put that as a prelude of what we're doing, because what Mark demonstrated is that the mortality for patients that actually had signs of life on the scene actually have dramatically go down, and that we will be presenting that data at AAST on Friday. And I want to, can you guys see this screen? I have a Word document. Can you guys see that screen?
No, unshare, reshare it.
Yeah, we still see your PowerPoint. You got to go new share.
All right, new share here. All right. Let me know.
Yep, we got it. See it now.
All right, so this is the other hot study that actually got accepted as Southern Surgical to be presented in Virginia in December. And actually, we were looking at the impact of early intubation in the pre-hospital setting in patients that had severe hemorrhage with systolic less than 90. And this is from pre-hospital. This is not in hospital. We demonstrated that in hospital. It pissed off a lot of people, but it is what it is. That actually the mortality went up in those group of patients. But then the question was, what really happens in the pre-hospital? So we look specifically at that. And when we put circulation first versus intubation, and in this group of patients, we had intubation first in one group. Actually, we have it here. Intubation first in one group versus resuscitation first in one group. Okay. The mortality, 13% versus 47%. Wow. Now, pay attention to this. This is huge. And it almost pisses me off, because actually what I'm telling you guys is that this might be iatrogenic, meaning we are causing this. So that might be an eyebrow raiser for a lot of people. Enough is enough. And I think that if we prove that, I mean, we already proved that these patients had the same demographic systolic clinical indices. One group received proper attention. The other group was just tube. These are patients without TBIs. And look at this mortality. This is huge. When I saw this finding, I was very pissed off. Actually, the resident that worked with me, he was kind of scared of me because I told him that's criminal. There is a big problem with that. And anyhow, I just wanted to say that out. Wow. The pre-hospital circulation first approach was definitely a survival. It conveyed protection to patients with severe hemorrhage. And as you can see, this is the problem, this GCS, right? We are basically looking at the GCS in this group of patients maintaining less than 8. We need to intubate them. No, the answer is no. We need to give them what is going to increase their GCS, and that's blood, that's not intubation. Let me know if you see this other Word document.
Yeah, we see it.
All right. This one we submitted to Western Trauma Association, where we put here every minute counts, extending the continuum of care through early pre-hospital blood administration. So obviously, I would love to give you more information about this, but this just got submitted. We still don't know if it's going to be accepted or not. So I just wanted to just quickly give you at a glance what we find out. And this is one of the things that we find out. We basically look at the patients that receive pre-hospital blood versus the ones that receive in-hospital blood and no pre-hospital blood. And we develop a timeline on this. And what we demonstrated is that the mortality in the pre-hospital blood was still in the 11%, and this is in-hospital mortality. And for the controls was 35%. Voila, that's the number has been reported over the last 2 decades, right? So this is the first study that actually, when we look at this, the time of blood administration, it creates a huge impact. Not rocket science, but it needed to be right on a paper. And this is, I think, that I want to share with you the conclusion that we had, which basically compared to patients who first received blood after hospital arrival resuscitation with blood products was started 19 minutes earlier. Put that in the back of your brain. 19 minutes earlier after initiation of pre-hospital blood program, despite a 5-minute increase in pre-hospital time. A survival for early pre-hospital blood was demonstrated with an 11% mortality increase for each minute delay to blood administration.
Wow.
And I would love to drop the mic, but I don't have. but this is where we are, team. This is the legislation we need to keep pushing for to make it standardized. And for those, the determinants of health are real, and we need to pay attention to which community we're going to be affecting and helping with this. So that's all I have. Now,
wow.
Peter, before I finish, I have a quick update. I have Northeast Georgia Med Center, Kenneth Health, Memorial Healthcare, Loudoun County, Our Lady of the Lake, and Tulane, 6 centers right now that have approval to put data. Now, I need champions to start putting the data. So I want to know when we can get those champions, and if you have names of those champions, please forward to them. We need to start putting information into the data.
I have Candace. Before I get Dr. Pepe in here, Candace Pineda, trauma coordinator at Memorial Regional, walking through the emergency department right now. Can you answer that?
All right. So at Memorial in our exchange program, or which piece?
At Memorial, as far as putting data in on each trauma patient coming in, right? Putting it into the registry?
Yes. So the hardest piece is obviously getting through the legal and the DUAs and everything. But once you do that, it's very quick and easy. They send you the spreadsheet of things that you need to enter, and you can enter it through REDCap. The data elements I can pull up for you, but it's all of our pre-hospital vitals, our first set of vitals, all the interventions that we're providing, and our resuscitative efforts and vitals.
So are you the champion at Memorial Regional, Candace, who's doing that? And I see Madonna chiming in at St. Mary's. Is that a you thing?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. And Madonna, that's a you thing at St. Mary's?
Yes.
Okay, so it looks like we have our folks covered down here. But Juan, if those other locations, I believe that we know the folks, especially at Loudoun and other places, we're happy to reach out and help out. Just let me know.
Yeah, no, that's the purpose of this. So thank you so much. And as soon as we start gathering data, we're gonna start putting some numbers out there so people can see a bar graph or where we're heading with this.
Can you do me a favor and just repeat the list of locations one more time, so that because I see Brandon's gonna help out with Northeast Georgia tomorrow.
Yeah, so Northeast Georgia, Kenneth Health, Memorial, Our Lady of the Lake, and I'm assuming it's Memorial Loudoun County. Is that the same, or that's 2?
That's different. No, Loudoun County, it's Virginia. Yeah.
Okay. And then Tulane,
Okay. All right. So definitely, I believe that the chief from Loudoun was here. Mark, are you still here?
I'm here. Yeah, I don't see him.
No, other Mark. Golino. Isn't anyway, I can reach out to him. Dr. Pepe, let me bring you in.
And Dr. Duchesne, just a quick plug for the next trauma symposium in South Florida, or whenever we can bring that ARC training to South Florida, we'll be happy to champion it. We know a lot of people that would be interested to taking on the whole resuscitative in the field.
Yeah, send me the invite, Candace. I would love to be there, and I will urge to invite Tom. Tom Dransfield is the is the heart and soul of the system here. So we need to have him involved. He's a great person.
Okay, expect an invite. Thank you.
Mark from Loudoun, you unmute yourself. Are you guys submitting data into the registry yet?
Not yet, Peter. I'm still kind of tied up with a couple things. I mean, I'm tracking everything. I just haven't had a chance to dump it in yet.
It should be someone on the hospital side, though, to do that, right? Not the.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, because
I got an email from someone from Tulane. I'll have to reach back out to them to clarify everything. So I know exactly what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I'm gonna put down here my email so everybody can have it.
Okay,
awesome.
Thanks, Doc.
Awesome. All right, let's close it out. Dr. Pepe, how about some final comments and thoughts?
I just want to
remark a little bit on what Dr. Duchesne, as you remember, I think a month or two ago, I was saying we need some data on time, to get the blood product on board, because people are saying, oh, we're in an urban area, not a problem, we get to the hospital really quickly. So I think that's really critical. The other reason why, if we really are preventing intubation from happening because you're keeping them from getting that sick and getting moribund on us, and we have to tube you, once you put the tube in, then there's so many other complications, especially in a hypovolemic person who is more susceptible to positive pressure ventilation effects on intrathoracic pressure, and preload. I mean, they're hypersensitive to it. So it'll have that effect, let alone the issues about VAP and all the other complications that you're preventing him from getting in. So, and cost, by the way, which is a good point right there about the.
Oh, Dr. Pepe, I think you're in a bad area.
And so I'm assuming they did it later. Lastly, on the calcium thing, I thought it would be really good to make sure maybe we do have some data. Maybe I need to learn. You can get blood products. Are they hypocalcemic? And how often? And is there any correlations with that? And I think I'm understanding, but even more so important here to know just being hypocalcemic up front, even without blood in the citrate and so on, is an important thing to make sure we collect more data on, I think. I don't know. Do you agree with that, Juan, or what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think we need to have our next discussion, just a topic on calcium and how it goes down and what is the impact of that. Just a quick observation from our data. We've noticed, and Tom is the one that actually brought this to me, infusion of calcium in a hypovolemic hemorrhagic patient can be detrimental without blood first. So we need to keep those things that we are actually just, unfortunately, we're just observing. We don't have real data of why or when this is happening. But these kind of patients, we are putting a demand on the heart with contractility. So it's a demand, it's basically an increased demand in a hypovolemic, hypoxic environment. And VTAC and SVTs can occur. So we need to be very cautious about the timing. We don't know what should be first. To me, blood should be first, followed by calcium and TXA.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff. Wow. Well, I can tell you that was a mic drop moment, probably the second mic drop moment after the interruption earlier. But that data you're presenting is, I mean, we haven't seen data like that in trauma in decades. Like, as far as a tremendous difference, and it's EMS making that difference. Lastly, I want to bring, he doesn't know I'm about to call on him, but Dr. Scott Branny from Colorado. Just wanted to bring in someone who's taking this from a statewide level. Scott, can you give us an update how things are going in Colorado? And I hope also you're connected in with Juan and the registry in Tulane.
Yeah, and first and foremost, I mean, tremendously impressive data. That stuff's just spectacular. And we are definitely planning on participating in the registry. We have the advantage that that's still a little ways off for us, so we're actually able to be constructing our system to where it'll meet our data requirements, hopefully yours, as well as some probably regulatory reporting on it. So we're still in assembling our package basically as we get that, but we've got a little luxury of time. We are moving along. We did get our first waiver. We kind of put one out for one of the agencies I'm actually medical director for as a trial balloon. Colorado is a little bit unique in terms of our waiver process, that the state has a set of approved waiver guidelines that if you largely meet, you pretty much almost get an automatic waiver. And our waiver went through, interestingly, for basically just specifying whole blood. It doesn't specify cold stored versus warm fresh. So the walking blood bank piece still has at least some capability with that standpoint. And we may have some rural agencies expressing a lot of interest there. Otherwise, we are on track for starting 2 pilot programs before the end of the year. We're putting together our best mimic of what the Heroes in Arms program has done in San Antonio with our blood supplier Vitalant. That's moving along well. But we're still, I mean, we're baby steps compared to the rest of you guys, but we're moving that direction, still looking at pretty much a whole statewide implementation after the pilot program, with everything of that probably going online first and second quarters of next year.
Wow. Awesome. Thank you so much for that update. And then the last two people, just real quick. So Chief Bank, if you wouldn't mind, and then Dr. Miramontes also just a few final last words to check in with you guys in Texas.
Yeah, so we're working with Randy on this data to see now 115 agencies, and we're kind of joking on a call the other day. It's almost like Jerry turning to Ed, looking at the tote board total to see who's come online since the last time we took a look like a week ago. So to see this take off across the country, and agree with Dr. Duchesne 100% that this is the right path, and it's just taken a while to kind of hammer it forward, and it's growing. Hugely. We did a presentation for FICOMs yesterday at the executive committee level that Dr. Krohmer was talking about. So we're definitely driving the federal side at this point just to try and get some buy-in and show that this truly can save lives. And very interesting to see the drone portion of this that's actually going to be live here shortly. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a game changer. Thank you. Great work. You were probably the earliest, one of the earliest people in the country to do what you're doing. So it must be nice for you to see how this has blossomed. Yeah,
it is pretty nice. It's pretty cool. It's pretty nice to see this kind of expand across the country as the whispers at Eagles in the early 2015, 2016 era. And now to see a conference call like this is pretty cool.
Yeah. All right. And let's take it home with San Antonio. So Dr. Miramontes, thoughts, comments?
Well, I actually have two comments. Number one about the timing of TXA blood and calcium. I think it should be in that order. Give the TXA because you can push it, and then while you're getting the blood hung, and then give calcium later, like Juan was saying. I think that's operationally that works best for us. I think would be the best option. Second thing is, I got a very interesting phone call today from my chief that says, dude, we're spending too much money on blood. How can we reduce blood use? And actually, I'm talking to CJ, and it's like, we should probably be giving more blood. We should be probably using a shock index of 1 instead of 1.2 that we have now. So we really got to figure out this payment stuff. The price of blood's going up and up and up as the blood banks are ripping us off on this. So I think got to figure out this payment thing. I can't absorb this operationally at $500 a bag the way we're giving it. So we've got to figure that part out. It should be allowed by Medicare, Medicaid, and private insurance. We could probably try and bill it, and I bet you they pay it. But Medicare, Medicaid, we got to figure that out, or have it funded through some other mechanism.
100%. But don't you all agree that this drone concept, and I keep going back to it because if the hospital owns the blood, it's being deployed from the hospital, that it becomes not an EMS thing anymore, and then all we need is the life flow, we need the Q and flow and the tubing, and we're good to go if it just drops in on us. What are your thoughts on that?
So, Peter, I'm going to disagree with you because the hospital can only bill for the blood if they got the patient and they're able to bill the patient because they're alive, right? So it depends. So if the blood's coming from hospital X, but the patient goes to hospital Y, they can't bill the blood. Get it?
Right. Yeah, except that if we're all in it together, like I have a friend who operated one of our cases, and we had dinner a few months ago, and he told me, he's like, that guy's bill was $1 million. Okay, so that the hospital is billing plenty for that $500 it costs us. So I think that is from a partnership. If they're spending 10, 15, 20 grand a year on those patients, they're going to collect the money. So, I personally think it should be hospitals buy blood and they send it out to the scene. And if it happens to come to their hospital, great. If it doesn't, they'll get the next one.
And could a coalition be set up between the hospitals if they have a multi-trauma center community, just like you use helicopter resources? And does everybody pay into it? That's another thought.
No, I believe that the One Blood has One Blood's a Florida distributor. They have a contract individually with the hospital itself, not as a coalition, but I could be wrong on that.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's bring in David Long from Virginia, Thames, Tidewater.
Hey, Doc, just to that point, so we that has been one of the things that we fought from the very beginning with our program, and what we got from the hospital systems, again, was maybe it's political, but at the end of the day, when we look at a lot of the blood banks that are in hospitals, their sole responsibility is to receive blood through whatever supplier that they have, and essentially to hold that blood, make it available for services within the facility. But the point of sending blood outside the hospital, like to an EMS agency and et cetera, that takes on the role of distribution services, which a lot of them will point to the AABB and other accreditation processes that potentially violates. So a lot of your blood directors start to get very anxious, nervous, and et cetera, having those kind of conversations. Our most recent initiative is in line with what I missed his Dr. Miramontes was talking about, and so our conversation has progressed to, since we are actually the purchaser of the blood and we administer to it in the field, that once we deliver to the patient, all we've asked the hospital to do is to bill appropriately for that patient that has received blood. And then we are basically invoicing the hospital to return that money to us since we were the supplier. So we look to be at that point of success in that. So we'll at least get refunded for the money that we do administer. So that'll cut our losses in half.
Interesting. Yeah, and then you guys are putting some interesting things in the chat. All right, you're kind of making this more of a reality strikes when it comes to hospitals and Stark laws, etc. So, anybody else?
Regulatory issues as well in some states.
Yeah.
Hey, Peter, one comment I wanted to make is on Juan's data. It's worth remembering that they used pack cells. And so we probably all agree that whole blood is better, which is why you named the coalition the Whole Blood Coalition. But they didn't let the unavailability of whole blood in their region stop them from giving blood to trauma patients. So I don't know if it's worthy of a discussion. Is that a first start that people can make while trying to obtain whole blood? Number two, if the data could show that the early administration in the field results in less units used in the hospital, which it probably does, is that another mechanism of cost sharing? Yeah,
that's two great points. Yeah. And Scott said Duchesne's data would be better with whole blood, and he's right. That would make sense. So, all right. Oh wait, I see Dr. Lautenberg. Dr. Lautenberg, legendary trauma surgeon in South Florida. What say you on this topic, my friend? How are you?
I'm very good, Peter. I'm listening very attentively. I think we're moving in the right direction. I'm very excited about what we see here. Representing both St. Mary's and the healthcare district in Palm Beach. We've got a lot of things on the forefront here, and I'm very excited about it. And hopefully Mark and Juan will get our data to you, and we'll be able to share our data, and we'll learn a lot more from it. But
Amen.
Very excited about everything that's going on. I really want to try and get more of our local trauma surgeons on these calls and have them participate with everybody. But thank you for the invitation, and thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for your years of service. You've done many great things. You've saved many lives, and we're just happy that you're still waking up every morning, and you're still committed to doing the same thing. So thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right, guys. Dr. Pepe, I want to give you the last word. Take us away.
Actually, I have a question, Peter. Where can we get this recording? Do you have a link for the recording? So we can start shoving this to our surgeons. We can shove it to people that aren't here so they can hear the message. We've got to proselytize the whole blood message.
So I'm glad you actually reminded me to do that. So I'm going to put up on the screen right now. Hold on one second. I'm going to put up on the screen right now a couple of things. Go ahead, Paul.
I was going to say, are you going to edit out certain parts of the talk?
Why? For what reason would I do that? So the CEUs, I still didn't get the QR code from Prodigy. Sorry, I'm going to turn this phone off. But for if you're a physician, Memorial Healthcare System, thank you, Candace, is allowing us to get a 1.5 of CME. If you're need CEUs, I will get that to you in an email. So if you signed up, if you signed up for this, then you will get an email so you can get 1.5 CEUs, and then our entire folder is here. So it has all of these PowerPoints from all 4 coalition meetings, and it has SOPs, it has SOGs, it has protocols, you name it, it's all in there. And then I'm going to put in the chat.
I need to let Peter, we should make sure everybody knows that R&D is, in case they're joining us from outside, is that's our inside code, came from Shepke, who came from Levy, et cetera. I can go on, but it stands for rip off and duplicate, just so you know, it's not just research.
Okay? I have Allison's phone.
So in any event, it's the point is we're all about sharing and making sure that everybody has access to anything. And then what we found in the past is that when someone gets some protocol, then they come back and make something even better out of it as they're adapting it to their own system. So we like this whole concept. So thank you, Peter.
Speaking of the LifeFlow folks and Q and Flow and other people, so if you need resources, you need help, please reach out to us. We're going to try and follow the same path that the folks in San Antonio have done for us, to keep giving to folks what they need. So until next time, we'll see you guys around. Thanks, everyone. Be safe out there.